wow. Just wow. Look, I had high expectations going into Across the Spiderverse, but never in a million years did I think it was going to be this good. This may be one of the best movies I've ever seen, period. Now, is that an overreaction to a movie that I've only seen once? Maybe. But Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse is an amazing art piece with incredible animation, an interesting story, full of likable characters that I got really emotionally invested in. It tackles the the Spider-Verse, in a way that's actually different from anything we've seen in the past, especially nowadays with various different multiverse stories. This is a refreshing take. Even though this film is pretty great, it's not perfect. A couple of pacing issues, the film being a little too long, and a couple of fan service moments do come to mind when I think of its flaws, but Across the Spider-Verse is by far one, if not the best comic book movies we've ever gotten. Anyway, spoilers ahead. We're not going over anything massive, but there are a couple things that we'll be covering that are considered spoilers. So if you want to go in spoiler-free, feel free to click away and then come back after you've watched the film. But now that that's out of the way, let's dive into this thing. The film begins with Gwen on her Earth giving a little quick recap of the first film, which I say quick, now that I think about it, it was pretty long. We get a quick recap of the first film and then a little glance into what happened with her and Peter Parker in her Earth. In an attempt to be special like Gwen, a hero like Gwen, Peter turned himself into the Lizard, and after a battle with Gwen, eventually led to his death. Captain Stacy, Gwen's father, blames Spider-Woman for Peter's death, which then transitions us to the present, where a vulture from another universe, almost like a Renaissance vulture. It's a pretty cool vulture. Anyway, a vulture from another universe attacks a museum on Gwen's Earth. She goes to fight him, and during the fight, Spider-Man 2099, or Miguel O'Hara, and Jessica Drew, spiders from other universes, join to capture Vulture and send him back to his universe. They are successful in eventually defeating and sending the Vulture back, and the two spiders invite Gwen to join their multiversal spider team. I forgot if there was a name for the team, I don't remember, but pretty much the multiversal Spider-Man Avengers. We then get our first look at Miles as he looks into colleges and fights crime. He's about a year and a half into this whole Spider-Man thing, I believe is what they said at the beginning. So he's still trying to balance that personal life with his superhero life. While Miles is trying to stop a convenience store robbery, we are introduced to a new villain, the Spot. Although the name is funny, Spot is by no means just one of your one-off throwaway characters. And in a long fight sequence, we learned that the Spot was one of the scientists working on the collider in the first film. During the explosion of that collider, his body was transformed and was given the power to teleport using holes or spots that appear on his body. So the little black spots is what he can teleport through. Spot quickly goes from a D-list villain robbing a convenience store for money to a multiversal threat as he tries to absorb enough energy to defeat Spider-Man and take everything he loves, just like he feels Miles did to him. Gwen then shows up on Miles' Earth on official Spider-Verse business to investigate the Spot, although Miles is led to believe that it's just to see him. Oh, to be blinded by love. After a battle with the Spot, Miles is taken to Spider HQ, where he meets various different types of spiders, but then he meets Miguel and learns about the different types of spiders and how the Spider-Verse actually works. Upon learning the common thread that binds all the spiders, Miles chooses to go against the spiders, against Miguel, and do whatever it takes to save who he loves. Look, this movie is incredible. It's an experience, and it's not something that I felt in movie theaters for a really long time. Do I even need to talk about how good the animation is? It's incredible. I'm always blown away by how good these Spider-Verse movies look and the way the animation is used to help further advance the story. Also, the dedication this team has to animate this movie is incredible. I read that Spider-Punk alone, just one character, took 2 to 3 years to animate. That's absolutely insane. I can't imagine working on a whole video for more than 3 years, much less one character. That type of dedication is insane, and props to you animators and whoever else worked on Spider-Punk. That's incredible dedication. Hats off to you guys. And speaking of characters like Spider-Punk, throughout the film, the characters in the movie are fantastic, for the most part. Ones that stood out to me as my favorites were Miles, Spider-Punk, and Miguel, with Spider-Gwen being up there as well. The only Spider-Man that I thought could have been done better was Peter Parker, or Peter B. Parker. Peter B. Parker, I thought, was one of the better parts of Into the Spider-Verse, and to see him being just reduced to a dad that for some reason brings his kid into battles with him, I don't know. I wish they made him a bigger part of the film, a bigger driving factor, reprising more of his mentor role that he had in the first film. I get that they try that, especially in one scene, but in my opinion, there should have been more of it throughout the film. He should have been a bigger part. But one last thing I'll say about the characters is I really enjoyed the Miles-Gwen parallel throughout the film. However, there were times where it just seemed to be copy and paste. They would do certain scenes, certain arcs, almost the exact same, but would just swap characters, swap Gwen for Miles or Miles for Gwen. It's a minor complaint, and I didn't really notice it a ton while watching the film, but looking back upon it, I think it would have helped the runtime and just the overall storytelling if they dialed that down a little bit. I like the idea of the parallel, but it doesn't have to be copy-paste. There can be changes, and I think they got that right towards the end. But there were a couple times throughout the film where I felt like I had seen certain scenes already. A little bit of deja vu, if you will. I think taking a couple of these scenes out, or at least changing how certain scenes played out, would have helped even bring the runtime down. Which brings me nicely to my next point, the runtime. This film is long. And don't get me wrong, I love long movies. I think I've said this in the past. I think the longer the better. For the most part. This film is a lot longer than it needed to be. The movie starts out pretty slow, with majority of the runtime spent fleshing out, setting up Miles and Gwen. And again, like I said earlier, kind of doing the same thing that we already saw in the other person's story. It takes way too long to do this. It takes way too long to set up the story. And throughout the first hour, I was wondering if the trailer that I watched was actually for the second part, because nothing with the Spider-Verse seemed to be happening. There were no alternate variations of Spider-Man that I was seeing. I was really confused. I was really worried for a second. But once we get to the Spider-Verse stuff, that's when the movie really begins to shine. And speaking of the multiverse, the Spider-Verse stuff, I think they did it really well, especially for such a saturated concept in movies these days. Across the Spiderverse tackles the multiverse in a new, refreshing way, and one that I think is not overly complicated or hard to follow. It's pretty simple, and it simplifies what breaks the multiverse, which I think helps a lot. I think they did a good job explaining the multiverse, how it breaks, what's important to keep intact. I think they did a good job with that. And I think the explainer, that scene, was done really well. It was really cool to watch. The only other problem I had with this film was a couple of the cameos. I'm not gonna spoil like who or what it is, but there were times when live action characters would show up in live action, and I don't know, it just kind of took me out of the moment. I don't know, it kind of threw me off seeing animated characters interact with live action. To me, that just doesn't work, and I feel like these types of films are better when they're by themselves. And I think for the most part, majority of the cameos are done really well. Look, I'm not going to go into it too much more because I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but Across the Spiderverse is an incredible time. It's fun, filled with good characters, incredible animation, and just a really good story. Although I do feel like the runtime is a little bit too long and could have been shortened, it's still a really good time in the theater. And I cannot wait for this next movie. I'm so glad it's only 1 year wait and we're not waiting, another 5 years? Can you imagine that? After how this movie ended, waiting 5 years? I can't. That would be miserable. But anyway, that's about it from me. Let me know down in the comment section below what you thought about Across the Spiderverse. Is it as good as everyone says? As I said, is it overrated? Who's your favorite character? All that jazz. Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, thank you all so much for watching. I love you all so, so much. I hope you have an amazing day. And until next time, peace out, bro skillets.